Wednesday, World Economic News. Start off with paper money and a chart. It's a Blytick chart, and it's one of the odder charts I've ever seen. Well, it's not that odd, but it is really quite strange. It's of the Empire State Manufacturing Survey, and there are two plots on it. And one is asking, how are things going now? How are sales going? How's your pricing power? How's your margin? Are you making profits? And the other one, the future is in red, says, well, how do you think things are going to be in the future? And normally these two plots obviously follow each other. That's the way the human mind works. If things are going well now, you think they'll go well in the future. But this latest one, I mean, the plots have gone like that all the way across the chart, but they've gone boom, completely in strange opposite directions. They ask them, how are sales going now? Crap. Have you got pricing power? Are you making money? No, it's rubbish. How do you think things are going to be in the future? Oh, beautiful, no problem, no problem. In the future, everything's going to be all right. I don't see it. I mean, literally, the plots followed each other, and this last survey, they've just completely gone apart like that. Doesn't make any sense. But then the world is making less and less sense, isn't it? Next one is another Blytick chart. I'm glad people are using Blytick. Peter, I think it was, from Blytick sorted me out those months ago, so I can use the Blytick charts now. It was a problem with the whole of Europe couldn't use the Blytick charts, but everyone can now. And this is the Household Misery Index, which I think was set up in the 70s. Yeah, because it starts in 1970. Because politicians at the time wanted to actually register some sort of index instead of just numerical values, and they wanted a misery index. Anyway, it worked for them for a while, and these people have carried it on and have found, basically, if you look at the chart, you're a bunch of miserable bastards at the moment, aren't you? Anyway, it's worth a look at the chart over on the website. Next is one of these Business Insider flick across things, and there are 13 in the slideshow, and I've just picked a few out. The overall title is from Morgan Stanley. It's "We're on the brink of an inflation deluge." But I think Morgan Stanley have been getting an awful lot wrong lately, so come the next credit crisis, they'll probably get taken over by Walmart or something. Anyway, number one is inflation is rising strongly in emerging markets. Yeah, it is. Nice chart. And the sharp jump in China's latest inflation release has been a key focus of attention, but actually China has the lowest inflation of any BRIC countries, and it shows the chart for China, which is underneath Korea, Russia, Brazil and India, all with higher inflation rates. The third chart, all on the Morgan Stanley "We are on the brink of an inflation deluge," is inflation expectations in bond markets have been rising in the US, in UK and in Germany, and it's got the chart for that. While the longer dated US yield curve is now at record levels of steepness. What can I say about that? Yield curve, that's how much interest you get on your bond, and the longer dated ones, say the 30-year is the longest, that's far out on the yield curve, and there's the one they're talking about is the difference between a 30-year and a 10-year, and that's steep, meaning there's a big difference between the 10 and the 30-year. You could read this as that's a way for banks to make money. They borrow short term and lend long term, so the bigger the differential, the more money the banks make, and obviously that is what the Fed is trying to engineer. Number 8 I brought out, why have I done this? Year-on-year inflation in commodity prices. Oh well, yes, there is that. Year-on-year inflation in commodity prices is now running at 64%. So a price of bread and a six-pack of beer might just go up. Yes. Anyway, moving on to Econ Browser and the market, and what the market is betting what inflation is going to be. And 1 year out, the bet is for 1.6%, and 10 years out at 2.2%. So the market don't think there's going to be no inflation, all right? Project Syndicate, which is Simon Johnson and Peter Boone, who he always mentions, Europe's monetary cordon sanitaire. It's worth reading if you're into this whole "is the euro blowing up" sort of thing. And I couldn't find a start to read out to give you a flavour of it, but I'll just give you 3 lines from towards the end. At a minimum, the ECB, European Central Bank, will probably need to match the 1 trillion annual US rate of quantitative easing and front load much of it. That means as soon as possible, please. The euro will fall in value against the dollar and other currencies, and Trichet will miss his inflation target. He's the boss of the ECB, but Germany will boom because the price of things in German It'd be cheaper to buy Mercedes. That's Simon Johnson, used to work for the ECB, IMF. Anyway, it's worth reading. FT Alphaville, United Kingdom, Bleak House. I like it. Bleak House, in brackets, prices. Whatever sellers wish to believe about the value of their property, here's a reality shot ahead of a bleak housing midwinter, courtesy of Rightmove's latest house price index. And it goes steppy down, down. And people have written to me and says, why am I a downer on house prices? Why do I want them to go down? Am I just being cruel to people? Being cruel to people? Why should people, a young couple, write on a dotted line and then spend great chunks of both their incomes on paying for a poxy stupid little house in Britain? It's ridiculous how much you have to pay for a house. It just makes you a complete slave, and most of that money is just interest being paid to banks, and you wonder why I would prefer that. Anyway, I'm sorry that your house price is going to have to go down, but it is. The big picture, Barry Ritholtz, who has been a superstar through all of this crisis. Anyway, he's just made a link to a video deposition of a robo-signer, this is Crystal Moore, of nationwide title clearing. And if you've seen any of these, it's a comical, pathetic sort of thing, where they just drag a nobody out and say, your job is now to sign and sign and sign, and they're just nobodies and didn't know what they were doing, and they're pushed into it, and they are getting themselves in trouble, and you go, well, that's not fair. And there is a comment section with the great amounts of normal people talking all their crap, but Barry himself writes in here, you must understand how the mob gets taken down. You apply pressure on the street thugs, and they roll over on their bosses, and then on theirs, etc. It starts with the soldiers. You have to work your way up to the generals. And, you know, Barry's being realistic. You can't just go straight in at middle management or higher middle management or the CEO. You just knock over the little people who will squeal on their managers. Their managers get them in, push them over, and keep pushing the dominoes down and make sure the dominoes are always going upwards. It's slow, but it's the only way to go. That wasn't meant to be there, but I'll tell you what it is anyway, because I was going to do a separate video on the site. It's Alexa, and it's for overthepeak.com, who is now under 1 million. We're in the top million websites in the world. It doesn't sound much to be in the top million, but I think we started at 2.8 million, and that was only when I'd seen it. I've looked at other people who've got websites with 4.6 million, so we're doing very well. So I probably won't make the extra video now. Consider that it. Well done us. Bye.